Human beings need community in the same way we need food, water, and rest. And not as a preference, as a biological requirement. And we are willing to pay almost any price to have it. Whether that be jeopardizing our integrity, including wearing a mask, or pushing parts of ourselves down into the shadow. My name is Colin Charles. This is Enoch Marketing, and today we're covering Law 9 of Robert Greene's Laws of Human Nature. So what are we talking about today? Greene, Jung, and the shadow. Robert Greene opens Law 9 with a concept borrowed from the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And he referred to that as the shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself that you've repressed. The qualities that you were told were unacceptable. The impulses that you learned to suppress. The parts of your personality that did not fit the image that you wanted to project to the world. And this begins in childhood. You learn what earns approval and what earns rejection. And you keep the approved parts visible, and you push through everything else to the underground. And here's the critical point, that the shadow does not disappear when you suppress it. It just goes into the darkness. And from that darkness, it drives behaviors in ways you cannot see and cannot control. It leaks out as irrational anger, as inexplicable self-sabotage, as the pattern of failure that repeats across different circumstances because the root cause was never addressed. Robert Greene writes, "The shadow contains not just our dark impulses, but our repressed creativity, our unlived lives, and the energy that can make us whole." Greene's argument is this, that the person who knows their own shadow is no longer controlled by it, and they can choose. The person who does not know of his shadow is being driven by it constantly without ever understanding why. I'll give you an example. The person who feels least in control is often the person who is always micromanaging. It is the person who feels like they are less valuable than anyone else who then acts out deprecating and condescending behaviors. It is the person who feels most isolated, misunderstood, and unknown who's often the most gregarious. And you'll know it because it feels like it's being a overcompensation for the behavior that would be normal. His historical anchor is Richard Nixon. Now, Nixon was brilliant. He was strategically gifted, and he was ultimately destroyed by the very qualities that he most repressed, namely his paranoia, his resentment, and the deep insecurity that he never examined. These qualities eventually consumed his presidency from the inside. The shadow was not the enemy, and it is not the enemy. It is the unexamined energy, the same unexamined energy that does not stay still. Now, there's another side to this, and that is being able to recognize the shadow in other people. And this is the application that most people miss. Understanding the shadow is not just about confronting your own shadow. It's also about learning to see it in the people around you. Every difficult person you have ever encountered was operating from the same unexamined shadow. The member who causes drama, the coach who undermines their colleagues, the partner who sabotages the team at the moment of success. All of it traces back to something that was pushed underneath when that is now driving their behavior from below. If you don't know what this is also, if you ever read Beowulf, it's Grendel's mother that's causing all of the trouble that Grendel is acting out. And once you understand that, you can stop taking it personally, and you can start seeing it clearly. Now, choosing to ignore the shadow and the people around you is not kindness. It's willful ignorance or naivety. And willful ignorance does not make the shadow disappear, nor does it benefit anyone. It just keeps you unprepared. Seeing the shadow in others is not cynicism, it's clarity. And the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to see them fully, including the parts that they're trying to hide. And here's how that insight connects directly to Law 7. When you name the thing people are afraid to say, when you go first into the shadow, you become an ally to the real person. You are now not performing for the person, you become an ally to that driving force. Then that person's a lot more loyal. The person's more committed. They are more connected to you than the masked version of them could ever be, because you saw them and you saw the whole of them and you did not flinch. Robert Greene brings up another story with Lyndon B. Johnson and how he goes out to one of the superior congressmen at the time, and he recognizes that this congressman was particularly lonely. So he went out of his way to learn all of these things about baseball and the Civil War and all this stuff to speak to that loneliness that the congressman was not willing to communicate. He got into his shadow. And then once he got to his shadow, he was therefore able to drive the man where he wanted to be. Till ultimately he pulled a politician and stabbed him in the back. But that's neither here nor there. Understanding the shadow, when you understand it, you can see it, you can help the person address that shadow and move forward. Or you can use it for manipulation. Again, I will never condone manipulation on this channel, ever. But there are great phenomenons where people have risen to power because they were able to articulate the shadow that no one else felt like they could speak out. Now, there's another side to that as well. And with this, we want to get into third spaces. So, as you all know, my home gym is Regenix out in Carson, California. And I'm going to tell you about one of the rougher periods of my life. I hated my job and my work. I hated every bit of it. If you want to know why, go back and watch the first 4 episodes of Phase 2, where we just talk about those guys I was working with. But the other side of that is I really wasn't happy with my home life either. Now I live in California. I'm not with my immediate family, but there were things going on at home that were nothing short of torment. So it was hell at work. It was hell at home. And Regenix became my third place, if you will. Now, again, we're talking about the shadow as all of the parts of the human being that are repressed because they don't fit into the world that we've presented. And I wasn't able to be myself at work. I wasn't able to be myself at home. Regenix became my third space. And because of that, I was able to be me. I was able to be competitive. I was able to say things that were, probably inappropriate. Well, they were inappropriate for the workplace or at home. I was able to vent. I was able to bring down that shield. And I needed that so badly. And Regenix was that place for me. And the thing of it is that I wasn't being performative. There was no management. There was no navigating impossible situations. And it was just an hour. It was maybe 2. And it was the hour where I could be the unpolished version of me. And, I never said anything super harmful. I did open myself up for some drama, but, that's the price you pay for being vulnerable, especially in a group setting. But I was just authentic. And that full, unfiltered version of me was the relief I needed, because in the other 2 parts of my life, I was carrying too much. So shout out to Regenix. Thank you for being my third space. during that time when I needed it the most. It was absolutely a necessity. And if I wasn't there during that time, I don't know if I'd be here at all. I don't know if I'd be here at all. So, thank you. Anyway, with that, we're getting into third spaces, and that's about creating the container. So, I'm going to give you a framework that helps you think about the way that your gym should operate, right? And this is the third space. The third space as a concept can be likened to it's the escape, where because if a person's at home, first space, their basic needs are being met. Emotional support, family, all of that. And then you have your second space, which, fulfills your need for purpose, for work, for achievement, all that goodness. But that third space is where the mask comes off, where the parts of you that don't fit into the other spaces finally gets room to breathe. And a CrossFit gym is the third space. And that distinction matters more than most gyms understand. It is one of the driving forces that is the reason why we work with CrossFit gyms, right? Because what that third space does for people who are, going through it, it's so much more than just being able to hit a PR. If you go to a regular commercial gym like an Equinox or Icon or whatever, it's kind of more of a second space environment. You go to perform, you do the tasks you need to do, you go to look good, to achieve, and the mask stays on. But a CrossFit gym is very different. It's the physical nature of CrossFit, or like any CrossFit, not CrossFit, physical functions, is it creates permission for authenticity to come out. And that's the most social, that's the thing that most social environments don't allow you to do. Because you just can't be polished when you're laying on the floor, out of breath, sweaty as hell, after a brutal WOD. The mask is going to come off. People curse. They fail publicly. They look ridiculous. They're gross and sweaty and exhausted. And then they come back the next day. Because that experience of being fully themselves in the presence of others is a fundamental need that most people aren't going to get at home or at work. And because of that, people will drive past other gyms. I drive past 24-hour fitness next to Regenix every time I go. Well, they'll drive past those gyms just to be in your gym so that you can meet that need. Your gym is not just selling fitness. It's selling the community that forms around authenticity and vulnerability. And that community that's found in that third space is more loyal and resilient than most communities. And they're built around they're not built around programming or equipment or price. That's why we do this. That's why I have to go help CrossFit gyms. That's why I work with you all. And there's the catch, naturally. Because we all know that CrossFit gyms tend to have a well-documented relationship with drama. And the thing of it is, when you create a space where the shadow gets room and people have not done the work of Law 9 and they're actually working or confronting their own shadow, that shadow still comes out and it causes drama. And the darkness comes out without direction, without wisdom, and without the self-awareness that would make that shadow useful. It's permission without integration, and permission without integration creates chaos. And the shadow needs room, but it also needs limits. So it's the gym owner's job not just to create the space, but to be able to hold the container and make enough room for authenticity, enough structure to prevent the shadow from consuming their community. And that balance between making enough room and too much room is one of the most important leadership skills that this entire series is going to produce. So, in short, the shadow is the part of yourself that's being suppressed in order to belong. It doesn't disappear. It just goes underground and it drives behavior that you cannot see. Seeing the shadow in others is not cynicism. It's clarity. And the person who chooses not to see is not kind, right? Choosing not to see does not make you kind. It just makes you blindsided. CrossFit gyms are third spaces. And the community that they build is built on the shadow having enough room. And it's your job to hold that container well. And you all heard my story, like when I needed it the most. Truthfully, both times. It was different gyms. When I needed it the most during COVID, it was 1440. When I needed it the most during that hellish time in my life, it was Regenix. And that's made all the difference in my life. And I wouldn't be here without you all. So, here's the question I leave you with, right? Where is it that you're letting out the shadow? And are you making spaces for other people to also let out their shadow without it becoming toxic or unhealthy? And are those places holding that shadow well? With that, I'm Colin Charles. This is Enoch Marketing. These have been two very deep episodes, so if you watch Law 8 and then Law 9 back to back, you probably know more about me than most people do, and I am not super duper comfortable with that, but I'll get used to it. Otherwise, I wouldn't put my face on the internet. This is Enoch Marketing. Comment below, by all means. Share the video. Take a clip. It helps us when you like and subscribe to these videos. Follow us on Enoch Marketing. And if you want to have a conversation about how we can build your brand to allow people to come in and be themselves, and you can create an environment that is sustainable, give us a call. We're here to help you. We're more than happy, even if that means you just come on and you bitch for a little bit. And you know what I mean when I say that. I don't mean to be offensive, but if you need to vent, we'll happily listen to you vent. This is Enoch Marketing, and I'm Colin Charles. Next week, we come back in with Law 10, and I look forward to seeing you all then.